We're about to go live with Mr. Larry Tollin to honor Breast Cancer Awareness Month this year and also highlight a caregiver's journey. Because as a caregiver and like a patient, we're just thrown into these roles. One day we're husband and wife, and then the next day we're patient and caregiver. How does one guy go through it? From dating to falling in love, to getting married, to going through round and round of failed IVF, watching his poor wife suffer, not being able to do anything about it, and then all of a sudden his wife gets a stage 4 death sentence. How does one cope? Well, we're about to talk to the real Larry Tollin of Everyone Needs a Larry. Hi.
Hello.
Hi, so I want to preface his voice by just saying he's not feeling his best. Mr. Larry Tollin does also get colds. His wife gets cancer. It's a balance.
I don't really sound like Barry White normally, just today. And I think the title of this show should be called Every Caregiver Needs a Caregiver. So.
Yes, every caregiver needs a caregiver, and every caregiver needs a patient that cannot be in such a bad mood at all times.
I'm pretty much in a bad mood at all times.
Okay, let's talk for real. So we're honoring Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and we're going to highlight a caregiver's journey because everybody highlights a patient's journey, but the other half of a patient's journey is the caregiver. And, we wrote a book, Everyone Needs a Larry, because we really believe that the patient is only as good as their caregiver and their team of doctors and their support system. Well, let's talk about your story. Why are you Larry Tollin? What are the Cliff Note versions before meeting Miss Jenn Greenhut?
First off, I want to add that prior to the title Everyone Needs a Larry, was it Better Me Than You or Better You Than Me?
It was Better Me Than You because when I was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer, I said, I'm much happier having it. Better me than you.
Because Jen is a much better patient and I am a better caregiver.
Yes.
So the short version, because that's not easy for me to do, is that grew up in the suburbs of Philly, went to the University of Miami Music School, was in the record business for decades, lots of great stories for another Instagram. Met Jen on Match.com. Her tagline was looking for my Elton John. And when I auditioned for music school, I played nothing. Instead of Beethoven and Mozart, like most kids, I played by ear, so I played Elton John and Billy Joel songs. So I had to answer that. On our very first date, it was going tremendous. And Jen then says to me, I assume you saw in my profile that I definitely want kids. And I, of course, said, I assumed you saw in my profile, I definitely don't. So we said, well, let's just enjoy the rest of this meal because I would never lie to you about something like that.
Except you lied about one other thing before.
Well, I did lie about my age.
But that's a whole nother story.
But had I not lied about my age, we would never have met because I was over the cutoff. So anyway, to make a long story short, I said, I think I could do this with you. She said, it sounds like I said, yeah, it sounds like to me too, but give me one more shot. And here we are 12 years later. I was a manager in the record business for years and years, managing high profile artists. And I didn't know it at the time, but when Jen was diagnosed, I really found that experience actually made me more prepared than I thought. I didn't know anything about cancer. I didn't know anything about her treatments, things like that. But as far as sort of handling another person and using your gut and your intuition, wherewithal to understand every person needs different kind of treatment. Some people need tough love. Some people need to sort of metaphorically put your arms around them at all times. And I think it did truly prepare me. Jen likes to say that the best line that ever came out of me talking about being a caregiver, and the number one rule is you always need to show up. You always need to be there. So that's first and foremost.
even if it's a bad mood, which is probably most of the time. But I mean, you learned how to take care of yourself. You went to the gym a lot. You had your friends group, Saturday morning breakfasts with your guys. That was probably key to keeping your
It
mentality okay.
was tantamount to my sanity for certain, because being a caregiver, especially for a cancer patient, is a selfless job. It is never about you, and it is always about the other person, even when you are angry or sad, or no matter what your emotion is, you can't show it really in front of that person who's going
Yeah.
through life or death kind of situation. So yes, it was very important that I had both physical and emotional outlets
Yeah.
to spill my guts to others, as opposed to Jenn at the time.
So I don't know if everybody knows this, but let's talk about the day I was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. It was probably the most chaotic, crazy day in our life thus far, and hopefully will be the most crazy day in our lives forever. The day I was diagnosed with stage 4 was the day in the parking lot of the doctor's office that you ran over my mom's foot, not once, but twice, forward
So
and then backward. And then I had to leave you guys in the parking lot with the valet guys, and my sister and I run upstairs to get a stage 4 diagnosis. And I'm crying and I'm freaking out. And then
all
I
right, so hold
see
on, hold
you
on, hold
wheeling
on.
my mom in a wheelchair. And
Full
all of a sudden, I'm
disclosure.
like, wait a second. Am I
Let,
more concerned
let's
about stage 4, or am I
let's
more
start from the
concerned about
beginning.
the fact that that's my caregiver?
Let's start from the beginning. First of all, although Jenn doesn't believe in it, I have major ADHD. And I say whatever's on my brain. I'm totally unfiltered, and I'm never truly focused unless I'm hyper focused, and then I'm ridiculously focused. At this moment, I'm driving both, well, not both. I'm driving Jenn, her mom, and her sister. That was kind of the team. We're going to our first appointment, and Jenn gets out of the car in the front. I'm not paying attention. I'm just in a hurry now to park. I thought for whatever reason the car was in drive. It was in reverse. So boom, I pull backwards and I hear her scream. It's her mother. I ran over her foot. So I said, oh, so I put it in drive and go forward. Her foot was still there, ran it
Oh
over a
my God.
second time. The miracle of all miracles, quite frankly, is that today there's no damage to her foot. However, at that moment, Karen, Jenn's sister, takes Jenn up to the appointment, and I'm running around Beverly Hills screaming for help, looking for a bag of ice to put on my mother-in-law's ankle. The valet parkers take her over to the sort of waiting area, put her foot up on another chair, take her shoe and sock off. It's already black and blue. And I'm offering, $100 to anybody that can give me a bag of ice. And finally we get that. And it was a scene right out of Saturday Night Live. There's Jenn, her sister, and the first oncologist we're meeting. None of us have a clue of what we're in store for. And here I am wheeling Jenn's mom in with her foot propped up with a bag of ice on it. You couldn't do anything but laugh. I mean, it was
No,
so sickening.
my poor dad, when we walked in the door, he has now two patients instead of one. His
Right.
mom, his wife, on crutches, or was she in a wheelchair? I can't remember. Or was it
But it is a
boots?
very funny thought that at that moment, Jenn's probably looking at me saying, this is going to be my caregiver?
Yeah, I
Right.
don't know what I was more scared of, stage 4 cancer or the fact that you were my caregiver.
Yeah.
So that was the
And
beginning of our cancer journey.
probably had a right to be so. Yes.
Uh, so let's go back to, I know my immediate feeling when I was diagnosed with cancer, even before it was stage 4. What went through your mind when your wife, who's trying to have a baby and all of a sudden now is diagnosed with cancer, and we're in Las Vegas? Like, how did you process that? What were you thinking right away?
Great question. As you fondly remember, when Jenn got off the phone to find out that her diagnosis was positive, here we are in a pre-planned short weekend in Las Vegas. And me, who it never shuts up, is always talking, couldn't think of anything to say. And so I turned to Jenn and I said, where do you want to go for dinner? That was my first comment.
That was your first.
But in reality, I am, although not nearly as spiritual as Jen, I am a great believer in destiny. I've always believed in destiny. Without telling the long story, Jen knows there was a plane that I was scheduled to be on in 1979, and I missed the flight, and I was so angry that I missed the flight. It was an important business trip, and that flight crashed with no survivors. And since that time, I've always believed someone, something, or some presence looks over me and things happen for a reason. So, kind of from a selfish point of view, I told Jen, I said, look, my destiny is not to have a wife that gets cancer and dies on me. So I can tell you, I don't know how, I can't tell you from a medical standpoint, this is just a speed bump and you're going to be fine. I know that for sure in my gut because that's my destiny. And I
Yeah.
truly believed it.
And I think it helped me in the beginning before I had my transformation in Dr. Slayman's office. I really thought I was supposed to die and I was being killed off. And that gave me a little bit of hope, just because it's always nice to have somebody on your side or your team that really believes like you're going to make it. And even if you were lying, which I know you weren't, that was super important. That was actually really
Yeah, no,
helpful.
I really absolutely totally believed it.
Yeah.
One of the hard things was that Jen's oncologist, who was a Nobel Peace Prize winning brilliant doctor, is also sort of the antithesis personality wise of me. And I am extremely demonstrative and over the top on everything. He is very calm about everything. But one
He's
thing
saving lives, and we
yeah,
probably need him to be calm, and we
yeah,
need you to be demonstrative because you're the caregiver and the
right.
manager.
Correct. But he
Yes.
did say two things. One that I never forget, he said, you have a 50% chance of surviving. And at that moment, I remember thinking, well, crap, that means you have a 50% chance of dying. So that was one thought. But the other thing he said is, we want to be, and he looked at me when he says, we want to make this your life as normal as possible. We don't want to overdo things or patronize Jen or, make too big of a deal. Let's just try to live as normal a life as possible with a woman that's going to chemo every week and all these other crazy things. And I don't think that sat well with Jen because the way it came off, and maybe I overdid it, was that Jen felt at times I wasn't empathetic or sympathetic enough
Yeah.
because I sort of became almost, I wouldn't say cold, but it wasn't like I was, I didn't go through that, hi, honey, how you feeling today, and
Yeah.
how's, it wasn't, I didn't go over the top. And I think,
I needed that at times. I think
yes,
a patient is truly at their most vulnerable and raw and fatigued and exhausted. And there were times I just felt like, I had this mentality of like every day, whether I live or die, every day has to be so special and amazing because what if these are my last days? And when I wasn't getting that comfort and special day from you, and you were just like going about your grouchy way sometimes, or just like your work or whatever, it made me kind of feel alone. And obviously we've talked about this, but yeah, sometimes a patient I think does need a little extra love and support. And then we had that one argument at the table when I scream, I want my mommy, I want my mommy. And I've never said that before in my life, and I've never said it since. But that's how stripped of any kind of emotional control we have sometimes. We're just so exhausted and not wanting to be in treatment or just, feeling so crappy that something like that comes out. I guess I was like a 5-year-old at that point.
well, I think we both were still absolutely finding our way. And I think in the 12, 13 years that I've known you, arguably the greatest, I shouldn't say greatest, the loudest fight that we ever had came at the beginning stages. And you can look back in retrospect, you were scared and didn't want to admit it. I was scared and didn't want to admit it. And you don't really truly understand your emotions at that point. And so you're sort of you have some walls around you. I had some walls around me, and I think we were learning. I think
Yeah.
again, the older or longer that I live, the more I understand the life lessons that you get that you don't understand when you're getting them.
No.
I mean, I think Jen and I are far stronger today because of all the crap we went through. Because when everything's great and everyone's healthy and everyone's happy and the house is fine, your careers are fine, everything, all your friends are great, you never know what you really have with each other or with yourself.
Yeah.
Once you're really challenged by something like a potential diagnosis that could kill you, and learning how to take care of someone that's going through that. These were major life challenges. And just not to get too deep into, prior to this, we had been going through fertility treatments trying to have a baby. And what is the absolute worst thing a woman can do when you have cancer? The fertility treatments, but we didn't know it.
No,
And
that didn't have anything to do with. That's one totally different thing. But
oh,
yeah.
okay.
Let's talk about though, as a caregiver, you're not with me, you're just going to work or you're with your friends. Did you want to talk about what you were going through, or was it kind of like your way of being normal and you didn't want to deal with it? Like, what helped
Um,
you process like feelings that you couldn't really process with me?
I think I knew from the start intuitively that the feelings that I was feeling, I could not talk to you about because, quite frankly, I felt they were selfish.
Yeah.
Like when I
But did
thought
you
about
talk
it, I
to your
said,
friends about it?
oh, yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
absolutely. Yeah.
So you
And
taught, I know you talked to the 7-Eleven guy a lot too.
the 7-Eleven guy. Oh, well,
Because
yeah. That's a funny story.
you like to tell your story to everybody.
I have told my life. That's one of the reasons I married Jen. I was tired of telling my life story. No, I really did find early on. I'm lucky to have a really close group of, I call them brothers, that aside from my real brother, that I can really be who I am without any filters whatsoever. And it was imperative that even though I felt many times selfish, even talking about those kinds of things, I still needed to vent. I'm not someone that holds anything in. So if I have a negative feeling, somebody's going to hear about it. And
Yeah.
they were things that I think for anyone that's put in that position, you need to find your outlet, whether it's one or more people, but you need to find a person or persons that you can talk about your feelings, because whether or not they're selfish, they're real and they
Yeah.
exist. You can't
Yeah.
you can't just push them down. They're there, and it will
Yeah.
fester and fester until one day you just blow,
Well, it's
and
probably hard. Well, it like you said, like a caregiver might have something that they feel selfish, but it's not selfish because it's still a real feeling,
yeah.
and they're allowed to have their feelings. But correct, like it's not really that appropriate to put it on their patient, for
There
the patient
was
to.
there was a few times I would say that I thought you'd use the cancer card maybe a little strongly, and I would say something, but more often than not, I understood what the reality was. And even though I had this destiny that was screaming at me that she'll be fine, you still, until you get to that other side of the fence, as they say, I
Yeah.
didn't know. I mean, there's still doubt. I truly, no matter how
Yeah.
much you believe
Yeah.
something. So
And just so you know, the cancer card I will be using for the rest
I
of
know
my
that.
life.
I know
So
that.
that
I'm
is what you
aware.
get with stage 4. You get a cancer card for life. But sometimes we get it together, and I don't think you've complained when we use it
No,
together.
I
So
don't.
no,
I don't.
no. But it's interesting because I think as a stage 4 cancer survivor, it's still that idea that even though I'm 8 years out and I'm cancer free, it's still an idea that if it came so quickly from out of nowhere, that crazy situation can come at any time. And like even the other day when I told you how stressed I was going to get the MRI with the breasts and the implants and getting the feedback from the doctor, and I honestly read it wrong. I read my chart wrong where I thought it said need for biopsy, high need for biopsy. And I had a major freak out. Like all of a sudden I was dying again. And it was like, as the patient, I don't even want to acknowledge it. I didn't even tell you. I told my friend Talia. I didn't want to even put it out there, like the possibility, like I could have cancer. And now I have to go through it all over again. And then I read the chart again and I realized that I read it all wrong. So I was so relieved. But I think once you're a patient, you're kind of like always feeling like it can come whenever.
Well, that's interesting you bring that up. And no, you didn't tell me that, but that's typical of Jen. I mean, once again, you're the opposite of me. I'll tell you if I cut my nail, incorrectly, whereas you get an answer and you won't tell me. I have to sort of pry almost to the point of badgering to find out sometimes what's going on with Jen. And, I know that this session's more about caregiving, so I'll try to stick to that. But, I really think there's no one right way of caregiving. Like when I was in my record biz days, there was no, if you could line up 10 of the best managers in the business, they all have a different way of doing it. I think it's the same thing with caregivers. I think you have to understand your patient, what their needs are. Obviously, you do have to be there for them, and you need to make them feel safe, not from a medical standpoint, because they know if you try to do that, you're out of your mind, but safe as far as there's always going to be someone there if something happens. You'll always be there to take them to appointments. You'll always be there to do whatever is needed, whether it be going to the market to get more soup, whether it be walking the dog, whether it be bringing me this or bringing me that, or changing the channel or getting more pillows. It's a lot of remedial crap, but it's real important to that person who's going through it, that they can sort of almost I hate to use this because it sounds negative, but they have to know they can take advantage of you. You're kind of in a nice way like their slave for a period of time where you're at their command.
But it's also hard for a patient, especially after like the big surgeries, the double mastectomy, when I can't move my arms and I'm so independent. I can't even go for a walk. Like it's actually hard to need somebody's help for everything.
Right.
And you get frustrated.
I got very frustrated, right?
No, but like the patient gets frustrated because
I did
you hate
too.
being
And then
that needy.
we ultimately had to get your mom, who was a nurse. I couldn't do the drains. I could not. She had to do these.
No, you were too grossed out.
Yeah, well, that too, but I couldn't figure even out how to. Maybe I didn't want to figure out how to do it, but it wasn't in my wheelhouse. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. And yet you got the cover of the book.
It wasn't my doing though. It was
Caregiver extraordinaire was too creeped out about the drains.
And just to dispel that rumor that it was my idea to call the book that, one of Jen's friends was here and they were in we call the big TV room at our house, and I was just bringing them things and taking their dirty dishes back and bringing them more stuff. And her friend just blurted out, "Boy, everyone needs a Larry." And we both laughed, and it was such a great title because it's not about me per se, but metaphorically, everyone needs a person.
Everyone needs
this person happened to be called Larry, so that was the title, but everyone does need a person. And sometimes it's not about even cancer. It can be a much lesser thing than that, but everyone needs someone,
Remember Bo, our other caregiver, service dog, our little puppy who went through cancer with me, and then all of a sudden he had cancer after I had cancer. And then suddenly you are a caregiver to a 2-person survivor family. We became 2 survivors and a caregiver.
But I'm not a dog person, and we rescued this dog with a broken leg, and I fell in love with this dog, and I took him to a routine sort of ultrasound for his belly. There was something wrong with they thought maybe his stomach or his liver or something. And I dropped him off, came to pick him up like an hour and a half later, and out of nowhere, he was blind. And he was freaking out. And I remember calling Jen. I said, it's like The Exorcist. He was like scared to death, and I didn't know what was going on, and at the time I didn't yet know he was blind, but he went completely blind, and it was a disease called SARS. That's a sudden, I don't remember the clinical term for it, but it was something that comes on suddenly.
Yeah.
Still to this day, I'm not certain. I don't know that it just seemed too coincidental that he went in for a procedure fine,
Well,
came
he
out blind.
also had 8 great years with us, and I
He
think
did.
his purpose, was to save my life in a way. And he
But he
came and he did
also,
that.
he was not only blind, but then he started going deaf and he had dementia.
Yeah.
So the
He
way
was
I look at
done.
it now is I think it was preparing Jen
He was
for me for
saying
one day.
goodbye, but
Yeah.
now he sent us Lexi, and we are happy again.
Yeah.
But okay,
Well,
so let's.
I just had a detached retina. Now I'm going for hearing aids, and oftentimes Jen thinks I'm losing my mind. So I'm following Bo's path, it seems like. But
Yeah.
anyway.
So, what do you think is the most important component of being a caregiver?
Well, as I said at the start, first off, just to be there, to show up, number
Yeah.
one.
What's the
And I
hardest
think,
part of being a caregiver?
yeah, and I think to understand your patient.
Yeah.
As I said, every artist that I ever managed was different, and I had to manage them differently. And I believe every patient is different. And I think even when people don't realize, there's most people, when you get to a certain stage of your life, have had some experience in their life that would give them the ability to understand how to be a caregiver, whether it be because they had a child, whether it be because they had a pet, whether it be because they had a sick parent, whether it be because of the things they did in their job. For me, it was all of those things. I think at first you freak out because you think you don't know anything about it and you have to control everything. But if you just realize what your job is and what your responsibility is, and you sort of serve as the liaison from the patient to everyone else. I can't promise that every outcome will be like Jen's, but I think, ultimately Jen will tell you that aside from having a brilliant oncologist and a good team of medical people, it was the mental stuff that she grasped inside in her own personal beliefs of positivity and love and things that she built her company on, that it was very instrumental in healing her. And I think if you're the caregiver and you see that, you have to lean into it even more, especially whether real or not. If the person is believing it, whether you believe it or not, allow them to believe it and give them, further substance to strengthen that belief, so to speak.
Yeah. Well, it's almost like the caregiver holds space for the heal. That's in a way a different perspective to look at it, but you're holding the container, you're supporting, you're keeping everything running smoothly. So the patient has, kind of like the doctors give you the medicine, the patient has all the tools to come in and figure out how to use
Oh, for
them,
sure. And you're
and how
sort
to
of
feel
like a,
safe in that container. And I don't think I would be doing what I am doing if I wasn't cancer free in 4 months, feeling like a brand new person, understanding the value of self love and the fact that gratitude is such a powerful choice, and then just trusting that life is always working out for us and not against us. Those three like superpowers became the pillars of Love Zero Negative and the Zero Negative Foundation, and such a passion of mine. But I think it's super interesting because your caregiving tools became a company that you built called The Best You. And now you've taken those skills and now you work with people that need help. Not just, they're not patients, but they need just a little structure or support in their lives. And it's kind of cool. Like stage 4 cancer brought both of us into two different areas that we're thriving in. And we can say it's like the gift that keeps on giving in a way.
well, it's like I said earlier, oftentimes in your life, you learn something and you don't know why you're learning it. Whether it be, I had a client who I had to help rebuild a house that had a fire. And now suddenly I'm helping your parents who lost their home in the Palisades fire do the
Yeah.
same with the
Yeah.
architect. So had I not had that training a couple of years ago, I wouldn't have been prepared to do this. But I think also, to go back to caregiving, because Jenn was such a good patient, there wasn't a tremendous amount of coaching that I had to do. She sort of evolved into that positive spirit pretty naturally. But more often than not, a patient with that sort of journey is not going to be as positive. And as a caregiver, that's also part of your job, to find when the patient is down, when they're disbelieving in the process, when they are just negative about everything. You almost can't allow them to be. And
Or
whether
you can, but you just don't need to lean into it.
well, that's
You
what I
know,
mean. Yeah, I mean,
they
you
want
don't
to do
want to
what you
erase
did
it.
amazing is that every milestone, like let's say the end of chemo, the end of radiation, the end of surgeries, like you always came up, like we had even a trip to say goodbye to the boobs before the boobs went down for the double mastectomy. You had something planned as a celebratory acknowledgement, just to like come together and say, okay, we've gotten through that. Now we're getting through this. So I thought that was like a really cool thing that was like very helpful in keeping the team morale up
I
and
think you
feeling
bring
like a
up
normal person.
I think you bring up a good point. It's almost like we had a strategy. Like, I'm a sports junkie, so I relate everything to sports. And it was sort of like, this is the game plan. So we knew the journey wasn't just to go through one chemo treatment. It was a long journey. We knew
Yeah.
that from the start. And if you sort of grasp that from the start, you're much less likely to be overwhelmed with what's ahead of you, because the more prepared you can be, I think the less surprises, I mean, look, sometimes in life there's surprises, things you didn't count on. Like, I didn't think my newlywed bride was going to get stage 4 cancer. You deal with it. You have really no other choice. What I was amazed about was, after Jenn became cancer free, how many of her girlfriends came up to me and complimented me on, like, you're such a great guy, blah, blah. And I couldn't really understand it, because I didn't really think I did anything that was special. I thought, if you have someone that you love and this God forsaken thing happens to them, it's just what you do. But what was scary to me is, I guess, too often there are people that are put in the caregiver position and just can't handle it.
Yeah.
Either
Well, it probably is just like the thing that makes something end, as opposed to, they
right.
probably, weren't doing amazing. And then all of a sudden, I mean, as a patient and you're diagnosed with cancer, you realize, oh my God, life is short. I want to make sure I'm in the right
Oh
relationship.
yeah, but
And the caregiver
I also
too.
think
Yeah.
it was a credit to my support system, because the people that I went to vent about my feelings were supportive, but they were also empathetic and reminding me all the time of what your wife's going through.
Hmm.
So if you were someone that didn't have a support team or didn't vent about it and just kept it inside, that selfishness ultimately could win out. And too often people they just don't know how to handle it, and so they don't,
Yeah.
and they leave. And
Yeah.
that is probably the worst thing you could possibly do for someone on that journey. I can't think
Yeah.
of anything worse,
Yeah.
because it takes all of the potential positive mental aspects of the healing and eradicates it in one blow, right
Yeah.
like that. So,
And it's kind of nice now that we're out of it to look back and see how much we've been through together. Like we made it together and we made it through the bad times, the really bad times, and the great times. I even remember towards the end of treatment with chemo, and I never threw up with chemo, but I was feeling really, really, really nauseous. And I kept pacing back and forth, just moaning because I felt so sick. And you were in your office working, and I'm just like, man. And you come out of your office, you take my hand, you walk me into the bathroom, and you say, it's time to throw up. You lift the toilet seat, and all of a sudden, you throw up. And I felt better.
I still
And
don't understand it, but
that
it happened.
that
Yes.
is what, yeah, caregivers do
Yeah.
for their
Yeah.
patients.
And by the way, just for for those that know of people that do that for a living, I didn't stick fingers down my throat or anything.
No, it came
I
up. It was like energetically, you took my thing on and you just got rid of it. And so that's kind of what happens with caregiving and patients. We're so energetically intertwined. Thankfully, I didn't give you cancer. I just gave you nausea.
yeah, it's not. I don't think it's something you catch like the cold I have now. Yes, it's not
No,
that. Right.
no, exactly. Well,
But Jen often says, I wanted to let one last thing. Many people, when they look deep into it, understand it and appreciate it. If you just hear it on the surface, people don't get it. But Jen has oftentimes said it was the greatest gift that she ever got because cancer changed her life in a myriad of ways and would probably never have had the relationship, even with herself, that she does now, had she not gone through that journey. And so,
yeah, which is,
nobody
yeah.
wishes that on anybody. Nobody wants to go through that. But I think as a couple and as individuals, both of us are far wiser and far,
We are better from it all
yeah,
as a couple
definitely.
and as individuals. And that, I think, is the whole point of life. We are thrown challenges all the time, some really bad ones, some tragic ones, some really scary ones. But if we can sort of accept what we're being shown and see what we can learn from it, to trust that this is not trying to break me, but trying to help expand me and teach me, then I just believe every challenge can become a superpower in a way.
Well,
And
like my dad used to
it's
say,
up to us to, share, like we got through stage 4 cancer. We're still doing okay. So somebody now who's going through cancer might say, if they can do it, I can do it. And that's
correct.
sort of the whole reason why we wrote the book and sharing everything that we went through. And also, let's just end on a happy story. The book is hopefully going to be a movie one day. Hopefully, we will be alive to see it, but it is in development, a rom-com with cancer in the mix. We like to call it When Harry Met Sally and Then Sally Gets Cancer. So hopefully, within the next 3 years, we'll see it. I'm putting it out there.
And I'm putting it out there that George Clooney plays me.
Okay, I'm cool with that.
Yeah, I'm sure
Very
you
cool
are.
with that. Except I like Sebastian Maniscalco too, because he has the warm heart, the funny, the kooky, the quirky. We'll see.
Unfortunately, I'm more like him than George Clooney, yes. Remember, when you are dealt lemons, learn how to turn lemons into lemonade.
Yes, I think I've heard that before.
Many times.
But I like to end with asking the same question to all of my guests. So, love zero negative, we send love totes to consumers that are intentionally wanting to carry love and spread love. What, from a caregiver's heart, would you want to include in the love totes that are being sent out into the world?
Wow. Well, as your husband, I know what kind of things you are already putting in the love totes, so I wouldn't mention that. I would probably want to have either a photo that is the most important photo to the patient of either a memory, something that is, I'm sort of torn, something that is either really heartfelt like that or something that every time they look at it, probably more importantly, it's going to make them laugh. Because if you're laughing, you can't be crying. So,
Very true. You can't be angry, you can't be stressed, you can't be laughing. And that's a great thing to end with because our annual fundraiser is coming up on November 9th at the Comedy Store, raising money for the Zero Negative Foundation and for UCLA's Johnson Cancer Center Foundation. Tickets are on sale, and it's going to be an amazing night of
it
laughing
really
and
is it
community.
really is a fun night, all kidding aside. And I promise I will not be sick. But if you make it there, we would love to have you and we will entertain you. But more importantly, people that know how to entertain will entertain you. So
Perfect. Well, thank you for joining and coming on to
thanks for
What's Your
inviting me.
Story. We will be back next Tuesday with a surprise guest. Thank you, Larry Tollin. Where can we find you? Just say somebody needs some support in their life. They're dealing with a house, a
L,
crazy change.
it's a really long email, but LT at LTEmediagroup.com. Be
Okay.
happy to talk to anyone, be happy to give advice to anyone, be happy to work with anyone. Thanks for
Okay.
having me. Okay.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.